When I was on my way home from the event last year, my team, like they always do, asked, hey, Zach, how was the event? And I told them, I said, you know what? There was something special about the event, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. And it actually wasn't until Mallory and Dan and the team were talking to me about the vision for this year's event, I remembered what it was about the Engage Summit that, at least for me, was so inspiring. And what I think it is that this team has obsessed over the content for this event. A lot of time you go to industry events, I go to a lot of them. Many of you in this room probably go to a lot of them. And the networking is okay, the drinks are okay, right? The food might be hit or miss, but oftentimes the content is what suffers. You kind of like leave feeling like, did I learn something? Was it meaningful? And I think the team at Element has done a really great job at trying to curate a fantastic agenda for us all. A lot of the times you go to these events and the content's a little bit like fast food, right? It might taste good in the moment, but then you leave, your stomach kind of hurts, you're sitting on the plane, it's delayed, and you think to yourself, gosh, did I learn something? Was this worth my time and energy and effort? And I think what you've already seen today and what you'll continue to see over the next couple days is that the content here, at least, is aspiring to be a little bit more like a steak dinner, right? It's going to be delicious and satiating in the moment, but it's also going to give you the fuel that you need to go back to your respective teams, to your respective roles, and implement a lot of these changes in a season and in a time where higher ed needs radical change. So this is my goal for what we're going to talk about over the next 40-ish minutes here, and then hopefully you, over the next couple days, can be reassured that the content that you find here is nothing short of a delicious steak dinner paired with a fine cab sav. Mallory briefly introduced myself. My name is Zach. I'm the founder here at Enrollify. Enrollify is a free resource for higher ed professionals, specifically those in marketing and admissions capacities. We've got a website where you can come learn new marketing skills, discover new products and services, where you can find your next job. We've got a niche G2 crowd or Capterra software review site where you can review software that is exclusive to higher ed. You can find out what the industry is saying about higher ed media partners and agencies here. We also have a jobs board. So if you're in the market for a new position, check out Enrollify jobs that have been highly curated specifically for marketing and admissions professionals. Ultimately, what we want to do is we want to be your best friend, right, throughout your career in higher ed. We want to build all the content assets that you need, the community that you need to feel really good and excited and inspired about the work that you do. Enough about me and Enrollify, though. Let's talk a little bit about our roadmap for today. So I want to define, first and foremost, what I think this next era of content marketing looks like. I also want to talk about creator marketing and why I think it's an incredibly important asset to level, first and foremost for student recruitment, but also student engagement. And I want to talk about, in this world of AI, what that means for our SEO and content strategies, right? If we're not leveraging these tools, some of what JC was talking about and others, we're going to be left behind. And then ultimately, if we have time, because I know we're running a little bit behind here, I want to talk a little bit about why enrollment marketing teams should build media brands. And these sections could all be separate presentations in and of themselves, but I just got really excited, so I kind of crammed them all together. So bear with me. I think that there's a through line, but you can let me know whether or not you think that there is at the end. In terms of format, each section, I've got a context section that will set the stage, a framework, right, just a little bit of teaching, and then an example of something that you can hopefully take home to your respective teams and implement. So higher ed content marketing 3.0, what is it? I want to take you down a brief trip down memory lane. Who remembers where they were in 2013? Right, 2013, you remember? Yeah, you remember, maybe you're at the same job you're at now, maybe it was a different job, maybe you were on the vendor side and then you came to higher ed or vice versa, right? 2013 was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, a decade ago. It feels like yesterday. And this was me in 2013, and this was actually the first headshot that professional headshot that I ever took or had taken. I paid my buddy $25 to take his, very basic Canon DSLR and take a photo of me against a white backdrop because, I don't know, that's what you did, right? And this was for my first job, the first job I ever had, which was actually at a sister agency of Enrollify. And I was hired to create a social media management service, right, that this agency could then go and sell to colleges and universities. I'm pretty sure they were a very small team at the time. I think they just found like the youngest, cheapest person, right, that they could, and they were like, this guy probably knows what social media is, and they brought me in. And this is an era, right? This is 2013. This is what social media icons looked like, right? They were square and 3D, right? This is the era where a little editing app that you could only use on your phone sold for $1 billion to Facebook. And we were all shocked that this Instagram thing had become as popular as it had become. So they hired me to figure out, like, how are we going to sell social media services to colleges and universities? I would get on these cold calls, and I remember our starter package was $250 a month, okay? And that got you 20 to 25 organic posts across, it was really just Facebook at the time, right? And I remember I was talking to VPs of marketing and enrollment management, and they'd be like, $250 for you to post on our Facebook? Like, the whole idea of social media strategy and management was so novel, right? The idea that you would pay somebody to post content was just jarring, right? There was no precedent for it. And I had to figure out how to do this work, right? So what did I do? Like any young person, I went to Google and I started Googling, and I found this incredible think tank, or so I thought it was a think tank, that was giving away all this remarkable free content on how to manage social media. They gave me free templates, free ebooks, free guides. And it wasn't until I got a call from a sales rep, and this was a couple months after I had been consuming this content, and he said, hey, I'm from HubSpot. And are you interested in our software? And it was the very first time, I kid you not, I feel so stupid admitting this, but it was the very first time where I realized that the person putting out all this content was not a think tank. They were a software company, right? And they were a marketing software company, and they were leveraging the power of content to get me to buy their stuff. So I call that era kind of the era of enlightenment, right? That's content marketing 1.0. You can argue with me that content marketing's been here as long as content has been here. And that's a fair argument. But this is the era where it got real, where real money started like coming in and getting invested into this space. And then there was content marketing 2.0, which I call sort of the era of expansion. These are not industry-approved terms. These are just Zach made-up terms, right? But content marketing 2.0 is, I think, where we've been over the last several years. I would argue that we're entering the third era of content marketing, which is the era of edutainment with an emphasis on AI. So I want to unpack a little bit about what I think this means. So the era of enlightenment, right? This was the era where we realized content helps educate, and education helps sell, right? This was happening way outside of higher ed before it was happening in higher ed, but we started realizing that if we put out great content, if we started a blog, and then if we distributed that content on Facebook, and if that content was educational and not just academic, maybe there's a way that this could actually help increase enrollment. This could help increase our prowess on the internet. The era of expansion looked like this. Okay, we get it. People love content. And then everyone wanted to be a thought leader. Everybody needed to create loads and loads of content. And so this era was like, we need more content everywhere. Let's be on Tumblr. Let's be on Instagram. Let's be on Twitter. Let's be on Google+, Snapchat, and Vine, right? It was this idea where the powers that be thought we had to be everywhere, all the time, all at once. This was the era of expansion. The era that we are entering in, that we are in right now, this era of edutainment with an emphasis on AI, right? This is an era where we expect the best content to find us, right? Think about how you open your Instagram account or your TikTok app. And if the content that you immediately see does not capture your attention within the first couple seconds, you just swipe up. Every swipe up is telling the algorithm that you're not interested in that. We expect great content to find us, right? And this is the era where brands across the ecosystem, but especially in higher ed, are finally starting to understand the importance of leveraging creators, right? And the importance of building a personal brand. This idea that every single one of you has a personal brand, whether you like it or not. But it wasn't too long ago where the idea of you posting your thoughts and framing cool like frameworks and concepts that you were thinking about on LinkedIn would have been weird. Or people being like, why are you posting about all this stuff on Twitter, right? Like, why are you trying to teach via Twitter? That was weird until very recently. And now it's all over the place, right? So what is the era of edutainment? This is how I see it, right? It's video first. It's not just short form video though. Does anyone know what the average length of viral YouTube videos are? The average length? It's 14 minutes, right? So this idea that like all young people care about is short, like stupid content, that's just inaccurate, quite frankly. The reality is young people, and I would even argue every single one of us, care about great content. The length it doesn't matter, right? If it was all about short form content, you would never, Netflix binging wouldn't be a thing. So the length is quite irrelevant. It's all about the quality of it. Google's Bard product, and ChatGPT, which is OpenAI's product, have fundamentally changed the game of how we think about content creation. You heard JC talk about this a little bit. I'm sure you'll hear other people mention this as well. We'll talk a little bit about how this impacts SEO and content strategy, but we can't ignore these tools. If you want to play in content marketing 3.0, you have to become really good at leveraging these tools to do your work. Podcasting, right? Podcasting has been around for a long time. Guess what? It's still early. It's, believe it or not, just now we're seeing major investment in the podcasting space, even though podcasting as a medium has been around for a while. One of the things that I think is so interesting, by the way, about podcasting, right? Podcasting enables a platform for true long-form education in a way that other mediums just historically have not been able to do. YouTube, I'd wrap into this as well, but we are now living through a moment. We're about to enter an election cycle, right? And we're actually living through a moment where instead of, just watching a 30-second clip for a candidate, you can listen to them over the course of a 3-hour discussion with a notable podcast host. And I think we're living in a moment where you can understand that people are a little bit more nuanced than maybe you originally thought, and that ideas around policy are a little bit more nuanced than you thought. So this idea that you can understand a perspective or a point of view over the course of 3 hours versus a 30-second news bite that already confirms what you think, depending on the news that you tune into, is quite revolutionary. And I think that's really good for society, personally. But that's part of this era of edutainment with the emphasis on the edu, right? People, average consumers of content are just getting smarter because we have access that historically, right, was limited to a very few people. It was limited to the elite. Like, unless you were going to the political fundraiser, you weren't going to hear the candidate talk for 3 hours, right? Now you can. Now everybody can. Twitter and LinkedIn, too, being these platforms where you can build your personal brand, right? We're seeing this take off. Everybody can be a creator. Everybody is a creator, right? You could choose to not leverage the tools available to you, but you have the tools today, which we just didn't have before. So why does any of this matter? Why is any of this important? So the Burning Glass Institute recently reported that the percentage of jobs requiring a college degree fell from 51% to 42% in 2021. And according to Gallup, the percentage of US adults, 18 to 29, who view a college degree, a college education, as very important, dropped from 77% to 41% in just 6 years. You've heard it 1,000 times. This is not new. Higher ed has a branding problem. It has a product problem, I think, but it absolutely has a branding problem. And yet, we're living in the era of edutainment. We are entering this era, which means we have access to more tools, right? More resources, more distribution than we have ever had before. So if we don't figure it out now, I don't know if we ever will. So in the era of edutainment, I think that the institutions that figure out how to best leverage this wave, they're the ones that are going to be here tomorrow. And the ones that don't, probably won't be. And that's harsh, but it's probably the truth. I want to talk a little bit about creator marketing, because as I see it, I think creator marketing is sort of the heart of the era of edutainment. So just a quick little bit of context here, right? So creators are niche, what I call edutainers, right? And by the way, I did not make up the term edutainment or edutainer. But these are folks that have typically small niche audiences. People are following them for typically one or two specific things that they do or things that they say or ways that they present themselves. YPulse estimates that there are more than 200 million creators worldwide, and brands are planning on spending $6 billion on creator marketing this year. Now, this is another interesting stat here. As brands, we're headed, depending on who you trust and who you follow, we're headed to some sort of economic disturbance or disruption at some point, right? And yet, and as a result, people are pulling back ad spend like there's nobody's business, right? You're seeing ad spend across Google and Facebook just plummet from major advertisers, right? You know what's not plummeting is creator marketing. People are actually doubling down on their investment in creator marketing. And I think the reason probably for this is these tend to be more profitable, if you will, investments. They're typically smaller in scale, but just an interesting data point for you all to consider. So when we think about creator marketing, right, and a framework for what this might look like, I talk to folks about this, and they're like, why the hell would we give our brand, why would we hand our brand over to some a person that does makeup tutorials? That's just, what, And obviously that's one definition of a creator. But what I like to tell folks is look, if you're going to leverage creator marketing well for the purposes of student recruitment, you are the brand architects. You have drawn the blueprints. You've laid the foundation. Think of your creators as the interior designers or the decorators. You've established that the bathroom is here. You can't move the bathroom, right? But you can do what you want to the bathroom. You can furnish it, decorate it, color it, use wallpaper, whatever the heck you want, right? So I think that the smartest higher ed brands will find a way to architect the vision for the campaign, right? Whether it's at the institutional level or at the programmatic level, and then leverage creators and their assets to be interior designers. Creators should be a mix of your faculty, staff, students, alumni, and other brand ambassadors. So I was talking to somebody the other day, they were like, yeah, but Zach, I don't know, where are we going to find creators? I was like, you are literally at a college with thousands of them. They're in your backyard. In many ways, higher ed should be leading the creator marketing game, right? You guys you look out your backyard and you've got everybody there. It's way tougher for Coca-Cola to do creator marketing than it is for you to do creator marketing. This is a medium-ish hot take, but I think 80 to 90% of your marketing content should be developed by creators. Why do I think this? Here's why. How many of you spend more time in meetings about the content that you should be creating than actually creating that content, right? Think about it. Think about all the meetings you have about the email flow versus the amount of time you actually spend drafting the email content, flow. By the time you get the time to actually create the content, you're so freaking burnt out that you just are like, here you go, Jimmy, and you leave it there. Whereas creators, content is their business. They obsess over it. It's all they do. They understand. They know when Instagram changes an algorithm way before marketers understand that. Why? Because they're constantly creating content. So they just, quite frankly, have more time. Therefore, they're better at it. This is another very hot take. Hot takes are meant to be, they're meant to elicit reaction. But I think most people would be better off firing their marketing agencies and allocating that budget towards creator marketing campaigns. And this isn't as flippant as you might think it is. It is a little flippant. It's not as flippant as you might think it is. I think that there's an opportunity for this new role to emerge, and I think that this role should absolutely be in-house, right, of the strategic content engineer. Again, kind of a made-up term. In my mind, in my opinion, this person is the liaison between the marketing leadership and your creators. They have to have a really good understanding of your institutional brand. They have to have an incredibly solid understanding of your marketing objectives, but they also have to really understand how content works. They might not be the best at creating content themselves. They should be very capable of doing it, but they have to know what hits, what it takes to go viral. They have to understand the importance of a hook. They have to understand what it looks like to work with and for creators. In my mind, there are three types of creators. We've got the originators, the facilitators, and the experts. Think about your originators as people typically talking to a niche audience. They're the ones creating the content themselves, your Instagrammers, your YouTubers. Think about facilitators as podcast hosts, people that have built up an audience, right, a following, but that audience and that following is ever changing depending on the guests that they bring on. And think about your experts as your faculty, your staff, people that have done something notable that has given them some sort of credibility that they're worth listening to in their field. There are others, but these are the three that I feel most comfortable talking about now. So here's an example of how all this pulls together. You want something a little bit more tangible? Here it is. Set an enrollment goal for a particular campaign. Maybe your enrollment goal is to increase applications to a specific set of programs from women ages 25 to 45 by 25%. That's your enrollment goal. That's what you're after. Here's what this would look like if you were leveraging creator marketing appropriately. Determine the campaign architecture, right? What are the constraints? Creators, what can you not say? What can you not do? What does it look like to craft a chief positioning statement? What is it that you ultimately want an audience to know about you, to remember about you? And if you have to set a primary CTA, a primary call to action. From there, you work with your strategic content engineer to figure out what kind of creator do we need for this campaign? Do we need originators? Do we need facilitators? Do we need experts? Do we need all of them? Then you want to go and find your actual creators. If you're recruiting for an on-campus program, right, if you're at the undergraduate level or even if you're at the grad level recruiting on campus, you're probably looking for regional creators. You're probably going to get way better success with quote-unquote micro-influencers than you are with folks, like the Kardashians or Mr. Beast, even if you could afford them. Next, you want to develop the content, or you want to review the content that creators developed, right? Again, you're the architect. You drew the blueprints. If it doesn't match, it doesn't match. Right? You have that authority. You want to obsess over a consistent call to action. And in my opinion, this shouldn't just be apply now. This should go to some sort of specific offer, whether it's coming to an event, whether it's requesting a call with an admissions counselor or a student, etc. From there, you want to figure out how are we going to distribute all of this content, right? You might take content that your originators, right, the content creators themselves create, and then you might distribute that on channels that your facilitators have. Next, you got to set a measurement strategy. How are you going to evaluate the success of all of this stuff? This is also a little bit of a hot take. I don't think you should measure at the creator level, not when you're first getting started, right? Measure the success at the campaign holistically. If you have to worry about UTM codes and tracking for every freaking little post that every little creator is going to do for you, you will drive yourself crazy. And I promise you it's not worth the time, not when you're first getting started. Measure the effectiveness of the campaign at the campaign level holistically, as opposed to at the creator level. What are some specific KPIs you could use to measure the success of your campaign? Something like an increase in branded program search, right? Meaning you're looking for Zach's University business programs, right? If you see a big uptick in branded search terms around the programs that you're targeting, that's a good signal that your creator marketing is working. Why? Because if I see something on Instagram and then I go Google it based off of what I heard, right? That's influence, right? That's new discovery. So that's one way to keep track of how to properly measure these KPIs. And then finally, remix, review, reboot. This is an evolving process. But if every single person in this room went and just took a screenshot of this and just did something like this, obviously your resources are all going to be different. Some of you have $0 to spend. Some of you have millions of dollars to spend, right? So adapt accordingly. But I think that this is a super helpful and tangible framework that you could try. And let me know how it goes. What do I think that the Content Marketing 3.0 organizational structure looks like? I think it looks like this, right? You've got a strategic content engineer at the helm. This excludes marketing leadership. So this is not your VP, your director, definitely not the president, but this is somebody who can report up to leadership, but also has a really good understanding of how content works. You have a producer, somebody who's really good at leveraging tools like Descript and DALL-E and other AI tools to make content faster. And then you've got your promoter, right? People that are going to figure out how to properly distribute all of this, how you're going to leverage ChatGPT to write summaries of all the videos that your creators created for you that you can include in email conflows and newsletters, et cetera. And then your creators sit at the bottom. This is incredibly simplistic here, but hopefully gives us a sense of the kinds of skill sets really that I think that you need to do this well. And I want to talk about an AI-first approach to SEO strategy, right? So how many of you do SEO or have spent time crafting SEO strategy? Just quickly show of hands. I'm not going to call on anybody. I'm just trying to get a poll. Okay, cool. So if your SEO strategy, your content strategy development was anything like the schools that I used to work with, right? We'd all sit in a room. We'd get the whiteboard walls out, and we'd start brainstorming. What are some keywords that we just kind of feel like we should rank for, right? And we used to spend hours and hours. hybrid MBA programs that look like this, cheap, affordable, but excellent colleges in the Midwest. Like we would literally just like pull stuff out of our ass, and that's what made it. That's where our SEO strategies evolved from, right? You guys probably did the same. It used to be a little bit like a marathon though, because then you'd have to get it approved by all these people, and people, why are we going after this term? I don't know, Well, today, tools like Bard, which is a Google-owned product, it's Google's version of ChatGPT, if you're not familiar with Bard, they make this incredibly easy. In matters of seconds, you can understand what you should rank for and why you should rank for it. The reason I like to use Google's Bard, by the way, as opposed to ChatGPT for keyword research, is Google is the king of search. They have access to insight that no other SEO tool has. I love SEO software. I use a lot of them, but Google is the horse, right, if you will. So start there. So today we have the ability to craft these strategies way faster and way more efficiently, and quite frankly, the data behind it is way more reliable than in years past. So what's a framework we might be able to use here? So if you're focused on developing an SEO strategy or content strategy for a subset of programs, you could do this at the programmatic level, you could do this at the brand level, the campaign level. Determine a broad topic, right? Pull up your favorite AI agent, whether that's ChatGPT or Bard, do some brainstorming, right? Figure out what is the best prompt that I need here in order to get what I'm looking for. Collect 15 to 30 keywords, right, as opposed to just a handful. You want to go broader here, and I'll tell you why in just a second, and make sure that there's a mix of longer tail keywords and short tail keywords. Then you want to refine these keywords, right, because we don't all have time to do everything all at once, right? But what does it look like to refine these keywords based off of difficulty and priority, right? Maybe you know that this particular program needs more inquiries, right? Or we're really struggling to be known in the market for X. Focus your time and energy and effort there. Then you want to try to rank for as many terms as possible, as quickly as possible. This goes against all the SEO advice we used to give like a few years ago, right? Even like last year. And the reason for that is just because we have the tooling that makes all this stuff a lot easier. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what this actually looks like. Here's a prompt that I gave to Bard a couple days ago. You're a higher ed marketer who is an expert in SEO. One quick little pro tip, I find it very helpful to tell the AI who it is right at the offset. So if you define for them, hey, you are this person, I don't know how it works, but somehow the prompt, somehow what you get afterwards is better. So I need your help to increase our inquiries from organic search for our hybrid grad programs. I need you to brainstorm a list of 20 keywords with high search volume and low keyword difficulty scores, right? Because you want to make sure people are searching for the terms that you're going after, and you want to make sure that the terms aren't as competitive, right? Or aren't that competitive, and that you have a fighting chance at winning. If you're going up against like name brand institution down the street, you might not win for that particular term if they currently rank number one. So what do you suggest? Then I threw in the domain of this website. Bard, I said he, that's weird. Bard spit out these 20 keywords, okay? From there I said, great, these are okay, they're a little broad, can you refine this for me, right? So I got some better long tail keywords here. From there I said, great, tell me specifically of these long tail keywords that I like, how many people are searching for them in any given month, and how hard will it be to rank for those terms? So it populated this little chart for me, right? And I saw, hey, hybrid MBA programs for working professionals, that's a relatively niche term, 1,000 searches per month, and the keyword difficulty of this term is only 30. Just as a point of reference, anything over 60 is very, very hard to win on. So the fact that this is a 30, right? Okay, that's what we call a good signal, that there could be good time and energy spent trying to rank for that particular term. Then I said, hey, can you spit out like a bunch of different versions of this keyword? Bard said no problem, and they did. Then what I did, and this is where it's fun. Bard is great for keyword research. In my opinion, ChatGPT is way better for original content creation. So I did the research in Bard, and then I hopped on over to ChatGPT and I gave them this prompt. All right, I want to rank number one on Google for online MBA programs with a focus on social impact. Can you write me a 500-word blog post that uses the target keywords in headers and versions of its subheaders? I'd like you to draft this post in a creative but professional tone. Again, the core audience here is women between the ages of 25 and 45, so feel free to weave in culturally relevant examples that are pertinent to this audience that might help explain the value of our program even more. When we talk about prompt engineering, guys, this is not a great prompt, but it's an example of a prompt that took me more than 1 minute to write and to think through, right? This is how you should be prompting your AI. If you're not doing this, get good at this, right? Think about if you were writing instructions to a team member to do the same thing that you were asking AI to do. Be that detailed at first, and then you can always, refine from there. So they gave me a great blog post. However, one of the things that the ChatGPT missed is in the blog post, they specifically say, for women between the ages of 25 and 45, the desire to make a difference and contribute to their communities is often deeply ingrained, right? So it didn't understand that, no, I don't want you to call out who I'm writing it for, right? So I said, hey, try again, but take out any reference specifically to women. The content should be attractive to this audience and written for them, but I don't want the content to explicitly state that. It got it, and it wrote me a fantastic, not even, it wasn't fantastic. It wrote me a good post that I could make great. Here's another hot take. AI assistants do allow you to be all things to all people. It doesn't mean you should be. Right? As marketers, we used to say, I used to get up at conferences like this and be like, you can't be all things to all people, right? That was like you guys have heard this 1,000 times. The reality is you actually have a better chance than ever before at doing that. It doesn't mean that you should, and most of you shouldn't, but that can't be an excuse anymore. So what does an AI-assisted SEO strategy really mean, right? It means you can rank way faster for topics that you care about. It means that you can quickly experiment with content style and format to see what works. You can create content for 100 personas instead of 10, right? Think about how many meetings have you been in where it's like, well, hey, yes, we have these 10 personas or these 100 personas, but we can't create content for all of them. And you pick the 3 that someone in leadership decides are the most important. Right? Now you can do this for the masses. You can spend less on SEO software, right? If you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on SEO software, you sure as heck better not be. Soon. Not yet, but soon. You can spend way more time testing conversion strategies. And this is something that I think should excite all of us as marketers and enrollment managers, right? Think about all the time you spent creating the content, that by the time you get to the opportunity to test things, you're just so burnt out. It's like, oh God, no, we know we should be A/B testing the CTA, but let's just use this one. Now you can spend 90% of your time in strategy and just 10% of your time in tactics. Everybody wants to be a strategist. Everyone wants to spend time in strategy, or at least a lot of people do. Now you can. Lastly, I want to conclude with this section here. Why enrollment marketing teams need to build media brands. Everything I've talked about so far hopefully is maybe a little off the ground, but you can make sense of it. This might be a little pie in the sky, but I want you to pay attention to it because I think that directionally this is where things are going. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take us to get there. So building a media brand, let's talk about the context here. So organizations across industries, this is true well outside of higher ed, are talking about this move from rented land to owned channels. Right? If you follow any sort of marketing folks on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, you've heard people talk about this notion. I have personal opinions on this, and I'll save those for another time. But the reality of the situation is that this is something that's being talked about. And the idea of owning your user data, right? You owning the data of the prospects that you talk to has never been more important, right? People really, really care about owning attention, owning content, and owning distribution. So what we're seeing outside of higher ed is we're seeing software companies like HubSpot buy The Hustle, which is a major media brand in the business space, right? Think about it as a competitor to Morning Brew if you're not familiar with it. Stripe, major payment processor, they bought Indie Hackers, which was a very popular, well-known community in the bootstrapper online space. SEMrush, incredibly popular SEO software, they bought Backlink.io, which was an SEO newsletter. We're seeing software companies buy content companies. Why? Well, they want to own content, they want to own attention, and they want to own distribution. They want to be sure that when they're launching an ad, it's going to exactly who they think it should be going to, not to who Facebook thinks it might be relevant for. And that's this big shift that we're seeing right now. So what does this mean for us? So I came up with this it's a working framework, guys, so bear with me, but I'm calling it SABA for now. And it stands for search. So as a process, right, first and foremost, search for existing content brands or community that align with your institution's strategic areas of focus. Next, you might want to acqui-hire, right, these niche podcasts or YouTube channels or email newsletters or even TikTok accounts. I'll explain a little bit more about what I think that means specifically in higher ed in just a second. You want to build new edutainment offerings around chief faculty members, progressive areas of research, core alumni, et cetera. And then you want to amplify, right, existing thought leaders on your campuses and the content channels that they've created and developed. Now, before you tune out and think, wait, what? An institution buying a podcast network? Really, Zach, right? Content acquisitions by higher ed have actually already happened, right? And I predict they're going to happen way, way more in the next few years here. But here are just a couple examples. NYU acquired the publication and online platform Washington Square News, which was a student-started publication. The university acquired it itself to leverage it as a student recruitment asset. In 2012, UC Berkeley acquired the publishing house Heyday Books because it saw its offer, its core area of focus, align with it from a brand positioning standpoint. In 2018, the University of Texas at Austin partnered with a local NPR affiliate radio station to take over all of their programming, right? And they split the ad revenue. These are just a few examples here, but the point being that this idea of changing how we think about ourselves as just a sales organization or just a marketing organization and thinking about ourselves as a media organization, right? That's where attention's going. That's where everything's going. So how might we reframe how we think about ourselves as a team? So here's some questions that I think you could ask yourself, right? If Netflix were to create a documentary about one of our programs, which would it be and why? Who are the faculty we'd immediately pick to be interviewed if Joe Rogan, the New York Times, or Tucker Carlson came calling? What should we be wildly famous for that we're not? Are there any niche content entities that we might acquire and or strategically partner with? And then how could we build a regionally recognized, because many of us are focused on a regional territory, how could we build a regionally recognized collection of content assets that our core personas would automatically tune into regardless of what they thought about our institution, right? Out of sheer curiosity. What does it look like to develop incredible regional specific content? This is probably like the hardest question to wrestle with, but I think it's the most important one. Here's an example of a school that's crushing this right now, by the way. Northwestern Medicine, Northwestern, got resources, yada, yada, yada. But what they've done really, really well is they've developed this podcast network. This podcast network is a mix of faculty and student hosts, okay? They also have hosts that are a part of this network that are not even associated directly with the institution, right? This network gets 5 to 10 million downloads per year, and this has been an incredible source for recruitment, for alumni engagement, and for reputational development for Northwestern. This is an organization that is pumping now. It didn't start this way. It started with one podcast, and they just expanded because they saw the return, right? And now from a reputational standpoint, the fact that they own a podcast network and are giving back to the greater medical community in this very specific and tangible fashion is something noteworthy. So as I finish here, right? Why do we care about thinking about ourselves as a media brand? Why should we work with creators? Why do we care about taking an AI-first approach to SEO? Well, I think that higher ed kinda, right, or at least historically, had a monopoly on innovation, content, and distribution. We really should, the people in this room should be leaders in content marketing, not laggers, right? When it comes to leveraging media as a recruitment and fundraising tool, we should be the pros. Media brands should be looking at colleges and universities because of the wealth and depth and historical context that we have on information. Rebuilding the brand equity of higher ed is going to take time. It just is, right? But I like to believe, and I hope many of you also like to believe, that there will come a day when the value of a degree is once again perceived as fundamentally crucial to success. And when that day comes, the institutions that today, right, that in this moment decided to make the most of content marketing 3.0, the era of edutainment with an emphasis on AI. The ones that started today, they're going to reap, right, the fruits of that labor. So thank you guys for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for all you do.